Equity is really important in our school district, and we have been on a journey of equity for quite some time. Every decision that is being made in our district, we really focus on that piece. How does this provide equity for students?
That is Alfonso Jimenez, superintendent of the Hacienda La Puente School District near Los Angeles, that is showing how a district-wide strategy focused on equity can make a difference, and that the very notion of equity does not have to be a source of conflict and dissension.
Welcome to Sparking Equity, a podcast looking at how to ensure that all students succeed, with a focus on low-income students and students of color. I'm Pedro Noguera, Dean of the Rossier School of Education at the University of Southern California.
And I'm Louis Friedberg, Director of the Advancing Education Success Initiative and Sparking Equity's Executive Producer.
Louis, it's good to have you with us behind the microphone today.
Good to be here, Pedro.
In our last episode, I was pleased to have a conversation with my son, Joaquin, who is a professor of education at Loyola Marymount University. We sought to demystify what education equity means,
which I gather is part of an ongoing conversation you've been having with your son about equity for quite a few years. Unfortunately, the concept of equity appears to be becoming even more of a flashpoint of conflict in many schools. Why do you think that is?
I think there are two reasons, Louis. I think one part is simply confusion. Some people think that when you're talking about equity, you're prioritizing some kids, namely low-income kids, kids of color, over other kids, and that you're choosing to prefer them over white or Asian kids, which is not true. Equity is about serving all kids and making sure we're meeting their needs. But I think some of the opposition really comes from the fact that people don't like the idea of serving all kids, and it's political. And we're seeing that in the attacks on diversity, equity, inclusion efforts, and we're seeing it with the banning of books. So some of it is very political, and we have to understand that too.
And we are in the middle of really getting into this election year. Are you anticipating that it's going to get worse over the coming year?
Probably will, although I don't know if education will be the hot button issue it was in the midterms. As we saw, they didn't do as well as they hoped. They thought that they could take over school boards, and in many cases, they lost. I think they'll be much more focused on issues like immigration and who knows what else they'll come up with.
You know, after our last episode, I asked you to point to a school district that you thought is doing an excellent job implementing a successful equity agenda. And you pointed me in the direction of the Hacienda La Puente School District, which is about a half hour from downtown LA in what is called the City of Industry, a rather unpoetic name, I should add.
Yeah, kind of nondescript. Yes, Hacienda La Puente is a moderate to low-income district of about 16,000 students, where 75% of the students are Latino, about another 20% are Asian, but 60% of the students are from low-income households and qualify for free and reduced price lunch. But despite the demographics, it's doing quite well, and really a district we can learn a lot from. I know you also went to the district and spent some time at Wilson High School. Tell us what you found when you visited.
Well, Pedro, the first thing that stood out to me at Wilson High School is the large number of education opportunities available to all students at the school. Much of the academic program is organized into what are called pathways. These are four-year sequences of academic courses supplemented by fieldwork or other activities outside the school, and of course, all tied to college and or potential careers. As Principal Dr. Danielle Kenfield explains.
Every pathway has a service learning element to it outside the classroom, which is very important to me because I like students to have the opportunity to apply the skills they learn in the classroom in settings outside the classroom. So, for instance, biomedical science, we have a huge Health Occupation Students of America chapter. They do a lot of community service, but they also compete at both the state and international level. So every single pathway has that component for students to also get out, learn teamwork, learn camaraderie, and just have a really great high school experience within their learning.
Annex Reynaga is a 12th grade first-generation student I talked to during lunch hour. She says these are options that are open to everyone, not just a select few.
In this school, everyone has an equal opportunity. It's not like one person has more than the other. Each person is given the opportunity the same, and whether they want to take advantage of it or not is their own choice.
1/3 of students are enrolled in one of 3 STEM pathways. Those are computer science, engineering, and biomedical sciences. And others are enrolled in career technical pathways in culinary arts, theater, visual and commercial art, as well as business and child development pathways.
How many blood vessels did you find in the umbilical cord?
On a recent morning, I stopped in at the biochemical innovations class.
I don't see any.
Because our pig is like very tiny.
Our pig is the runt of the...
A lot smaller than the other, everyone else's pig.
Teacher Yang Soo Han says students are doing a forensic autopsy.
They each get a fetal pig, and they'll be role-playing as a person who does an autopsy, a forensic pathologist. They'll be removing all the organs, weighing the organs, examining the organs. They'll be removing the brain. And then after they look at all the organs and weigh them, examine them, they'll be putting the organs all back into the pig and then suturing it back up.
Engagement of students in classes like these seems to be paying off. This is one of the district schools that has been named a National Blue Ribbon School. It's one of only 33 out of California's nearly 10,000 schools to get that designation this year. Just under half of the school students are Latino, 40% are Asian American, and significantly gaps between Latino students on the one hand and Asian and white students on the other are narrowing. Gaps that are far higher in the elementary grades, suggesting that the high school experience in this district is really making a difference. That translates into 2/3 of students graduating having completed the course sequence they need for admission to a 4-year public university in California. That's far higher than the statewide average. The goal, says Principal Dr. Danielle Kenfield, is not only to keep students engaged in school, but also to give them direction once they graduate.
If kids were like me, I kind of vacillated in college for a few years because I didn't know what I wanted to do. We're hoping students can find out what interests them. And even if it's not the pathway, we believe they learn strong skills in the pathway in finding out what they dislike, what they're good at. So even if they decide not to major in culinary arts, that at least they've found the skill sets that bring them into finding a different type of thing. They know how to activate that.
Kenfield is also an award winner. She is one of 9 school principals honored nationwide for outstanding leadership this year with the Terrell Bell Award, named after a former Secretary of Education. At Wilson High, equity isn't something she shies away from, just the opposite. Achieving equity, making sure all students succeed, is at the center of everything she does.
Equity is something we speak a lot about with my staff. We really are consumers of data. We actively pursue data to kind of identify areas where there are gaps for our students and then together collaborate on ways we can close those gaps or do a better job.
But for Kenfield and his staff, equity has nothing to do with ethnic studies or critical race theory or any of the other contentious issues roiling many school campuses. Nor is it a single program or pedagogical approach. Instead, it's a comprehensive strategy, a big part of which is teachers collaborating with each other. To that end, each week teachers participate in what are called collegial lesson studies, where 2 teachers partner for a day to discuss and preview their lesson plans for that day. They observe each other teaching and then give each other feedback. At the end of the day, they write up their conclusions, which they share with Kenfield. Teachers also work with their counterparts in elementary and middle schools in the district so that when students get to high school, they make the transition seamlessly, or at least that's the goal. In the cybersecurity class, which is part of the computer science pathway, teacher Courtney Bush-Yeager, who's now in her 7th year at Wilson High, says students are designing what she calls a network topology.
So we have a cyber case that we are looking at, and they're trying to provide a network topology for a hypothetical company, so that company can design their infrastructure in a way that would be secure.
Senior Alison Navorio says she enrolled in the class out of an interest that began years earlier.
I think that like there are a bunch of opportunities. You know, you have like all the 7 CTE pathways. I don't know them off the top of my head, but this is one of them. So like even if you don't know what you want to do, you can still test out stuff because your high school is the time to test things out, see what you like and see what you don't like.
Angeline Waboho has in fact enrolled in several pathways.
Me personally, I'm taking 3 different pathways. Like I'm taking the computer science pathway, which leads to cyber. I'm taking the engineering pathway, and I'm also doing choirs, which is performing arts. So I think like this school has a lot of opportunity for you to discover like what you really want to do in the future, which is really beneficial for like deciding what your major is and like establishing what you want to do in your future.
Principal Kentfield talks about the 6-year-long initiative she introduced at the school, which involves working closely with teachers to get their students, in her words, to own their learning. She explains.
When I go in to observe teaching and learning or ownership of learning, I'm looking at the students, not necessarily the teacher. So I'll ask them, what are you learning today? If they tell me what they're doing today, I redirect them. No, what are you learning? Why is this learning important? And how are you going to show teacher or yourself that you learned? What's a success goal look like? So this is the framework with which we use to prompt the kids, but it goes back to now, how is the teacher getting them there? How is the teacher getting them there to understand what are they learning? Why is that learning important? How are they going to use it in the future? And how are they supposed to show you success? Have you communicated that to them? Because if they don't know, they're not on that learning journey with you. So that's what's shaping our kind of identification of owning learning. And what's really the best evidence is when we're in class and students are demanding that.
Adults who struggled in high school but ultimately succeeded often say that what made a difference was having a mentor or a teacher who really encouraged them, convinced them that they could handle the more advanced classes. That seems to be a quality in abundance at the school. Students I talked with spoke enthusiastically about the teachers who they felt had their interest at heart. Senior Annex Renaga.
These teachers look at you based off of what you're doing to reach your highest potential. The teachers want you to succeed, and they will do anything to make that work unless you don't put the effort in.
Her classmate Jonathan Chen agrees, and then he goes further, saying teachers seek out students' feedback because the teachers themselves want to improve. That's not something I hear very often at many schools.
All the teachers, they're always willing to take constructive criticism. Like my psychology teacher, after every unit, like he makes us like answer a survey to like how he can do better. So, students, they always have the opportunity to just give any feedback they want so that the teachers can do their job at the best level possible.
And unlike many schools where certain college prep or advanced classes have low enrollments of students of color, at this school there is a big emphasis on opening up even the most demanding classes, like this advanced placement and international baccalaureate literature class, where students are studying Shakespeare's Othello, taught by Josipa Casey.
Marriages are what? Arranged, okay? If Desdemona ran off with Othello for love, is that now a new novel concept? Yes, and that would explain why Brabantio is so upset, right? But even him, as this upset father worried for his daughter, is he treating Desdemona or referring to her with love and affection, a father to a daughter, or is it something else?
Casey is somehow able to spark a lively conversation with his students.
Miss Casey, you mentioned that Shakespeare in this one play, he ticked off the whole list of controversies, but at the same time, he was performing his play for the royals. So did that possibly have an effect on how his plays were perceived and how Shakespeare as a writer was perceived?
I'm gonna have you guys think about that and provide an answer before I give my interpretation. Okay, so think about it because Gian has her hand up.
Josipa Casey says opening the class to all students hasn't happened by accident.
So our coordinator worked very intentionally over the last few years to market the program, so make sure that the program was seen and heard on campus and that we communicated with students what their options are. And there are no exams to test into a program, right? So there's no barriers to it, so it's very much open.
Another key element in the school's success is involving parents and encouraging them to feel they are participants in their child's education. George Rosales grew up in a poor household in East Los Angeles. He feels the school has offerings that rival some of the best private schools in the region. but it's the school's open door to families from different backgrounds that especially appeals to him.
Everybody's welcome. This is wide open. Everybody's welcome to the safety meeting or any of the other organizations and groups we have here. We have a foundation group that I'm president of. We have Boosters for All Athletics. Come on in, help us join, raise some money. Yeah, it's just a wonderful, open arms, everyone is welcome environment.
That extends to the programs open to Vilma Wu's 2 daughters who have both signed up for the medical pathway.
So it's not exclusive. It's more like trying to include everyone. You have a choice. You can pursue what you wanted. You are not limited. Opportunities here are endless. It's just depend. Are you going to take it or not? Are you going to go for your dream? Or are you going to be in the background? But here, everything is open. Even clubs, everyone is welcome. No one is being pushed out.
This all-in approach seems to have translated into a positive climate at the school. Largely absent here, students say, is the common sight on many high school campuses where students self-segregate into different racial or ethnic groups. Senior Annex Renaga.
In other schools, you'll see people separated by race. That's how it was when my brother was in high school. And that's why he moved back to my home school in Pomona, because he saw like everyone, the Asians were together, the Hispanics were together, the African Americans were together, the whites were together. It's all separated by race. Here, sure, you can see some people separated by sports, but it's mixed. It's still diverse.
Danielle Kentfield says the school is also addressing a chronic problem in many under-resourced schools serving low-income students. Often these schools have a disproportionate number of unprepared or underprepared teachers in terms of the credentials and training they have in a particular subject.
It's, to me, very important in order to provide equity that every student has access to a highly qualified teacher in what we're teaching. So if we're going to do STEM, we're going to send people to that STEM training to make sure they bring cutting-edge industry standard instruction to our students. AP training is another one. If we're teaching an AP class, we need to be updated on if the curriculum changes. I love to invest funding into teachers perfecting their craft, both in-house and outside. So we're an international baccalaureate school. So anytime they change the curriculum or we're bringing new teachers in, we travel as a cohort. We don't typically send teachers alone to training. So for instance, the last training we just did in LA, there were 8 of us that went, myself included, and gives us time to kind of build off of each other's learning.
Pedro, what this school demonstrates to me is that by staying focused on ensuring that all students succeed, it's a pretty basic concept. This school is tackling the equity challenge head on and is making a difference in eliminating barriers that have held up progress for low-income students and students of color in many schools for too long.
Thanks for that report, Louis.
I did want to ask you what drew your attention to the district in the first place and what makes you think it's on the right track.
I think the biggest thing they have going for them is that they're not distracted by politics. They're not fighting with each other. They're really focused as a district on getting their schools to meet the needs of kids. And they have partnerships with the community, a lot of involvement of parents. They have 3 distinguished schools, which is a competitive process. Over 93% of the students graduating every year, going to some of the top colleges in the country. And a lot of what they're doing really is about getting kids engaged in learning, getting them involved in extracurricular activities. I know when I visited, there was a choir performing and a big spirit day, and you could feel the enthusiasm at the school.
What are some of the things that they are doing that you observe that are getting these results?
Well, under the leadership of the superintendent, they have a comprehensive strategy that touches on all aspects of the school experience. Teachers work collaboratively across subject areas, which is important because it allows the stronger teachers to be a resource for the teachers who need more help. Middle and high school students are engaged in a broad array of electives and extracurricular activities. And we know from the research that when students are involved, they do better academically when they have a sense of belonging. There are career pathways, honors and AP courses, and parents are extremely involved at all levels.
Pedro, what you're describing sounds like pretty much what any school should be doing, regardless of whether it is focused on equity or labeled as an equity strategy.
It is. And what's remarkable is, why aren't all schools doing these things? Why is it that some schools bring it all together and are able to produce better outcomes, but many, many others are not? And I would say it's because you have to focus on, what they call the 5 essentials: school culture, teaching and learning, support for teachers, shared leadership, and strong parent involvement. All 5 are essential.
And as you point out, there's also a minimum of political distraction, which means that educators can really focus their time and energy on getting kids excited about learning.
That's huge, because it means the leaders in the district can spend time at the schools supporting the administrators and teachers, and they're not spending their time with board members managing political conflict. They're demonstrating that a comprehensive education equity strategy doesn't mean some students receive services or resources at the expense of others. Rather, the goal is to provide options for all students, and then to work hard to make sure that all students take advantage of them.
And that just about wraps it up for this episode.
Thanks to our producer, Kobe McDonald, and consulting producer, Stephen Smith. Thanks also to the staff of the Hacienda La Puente School District. The Hewlett Foundation and School Services of California are sponsors of this week's episode, and we are very appreciative of their support. I'm Louis Friedberg.
I'm Pedro Noguera. Thanks for listening.